For 10,000 years, one rule has survived among the Hadzabe.
Point: never eat snake.
In a tribe where baboons and even hyenas are meals, the serpent has always been untouchable. But when they find a 5-meter python at Lake Ayasi,
something changes. Hunger knows no tradition.
And what happens in the coming hours?
challenges everything about Africa's last hunters.
The sun had not yet completely broken the horizon when Onwas woke up. 60 years of life in the Tanzanian bush had taught his body to awaken before the light. Around him, another 17 members of the camp still slept under the stars, wrapped in thin blankets using stones as pillows. No tents, no walls, only the infinite sky of the Rift Valley and the smell of ashes from the fire that died during the night. The Hadzabe do not build permanent houses. They do not raise animals, they plant nothing. They live exactly as their ancestors lived 100 centuries ago, when agriculture did not yet exist and all of humanity depended on what it could hunt or gather. Today, only 1,300 people of this lineage remain, fewer than the population of a single building in any large city. And of these 1,300, only about 400 still live exclusively by hunting and gathering, without any regular contact with the modern world. Onwas is one of them. His body carries the marks of a lifetime in the African bush. Scars from acacia thorns cut his arms like maps of ancient battles. An irregular mark on his left shoulder tells the story of a leopard attack he survived at 30 years old. Another scar, thinner, snakes down his right calf, a memory of a scorpion sting that almost cost him his leg. Half of his teeth are gone. Those that remain are yellowed by time and the constant use of bitter roots that the Hadzabe chew to clean their mouths. On that morning, the hunger was real. The last 3 days had been difficult. The dry season was at its peak, and the animals had migrated to more distant areas in search of water. The women of the group returned the day before with only a few shumuko roots and a handful of baobab fruits. Nutrition enough to keep the children quiet, but far from satisfying the men who needed to hunt. Onwas gathered the hunters with a silent gesture. 4 men stood up almost at the same time. Giga, the group's best archer, recognized for bringing down birds in mid-flight. Maduru, a specialist in finding wild beehives. Ngaula, the youngest, still trying to prove his worth. And Kauda, whose eyes could identify tracks invisible to any other human being. Each took his bows made by hand, with strings braided from animal tendons and wood from specific trees that only the Hadzabe know how to identify. Arrows with sharp tips, some of them smeared with poison extracted from the desert rose, a plant capable of bringing down a giraffe in a matter of minutes. The poison is so potent that the hunters must exercise extreme care when handling it. An accidental cut can mean death. They departed in absolute silence. Communication between Hadzabe hunters happens almost entirely through gestures. A finger pointed down means a fresh track. An open hand raised orders. An immediate stop. 2 fingers to the eyes indicate that something has been sighted. This silent language was developed over generations, refined by the need not to startle prey that can hear the slightest whisper dozens of meters away. The hunting territory of the Hadzabe extends for approximately 4,000 square kilometers around Lake Ayasi in northern Tanzania. An area equivalent to twice the size of the city of São Paulo, but inhabited by fewer than 500 people. It is a landscape of violent contrasts, golden savannas that turn into forests of thorny acacias, rocky valleys that descend abruptly to swamps where crocodiles lurk, hills covered by ancient baobabs whose trunks can have circumferences of 25 meters. Lake Ayasi itself is a seasonal body of water embedded in the heart of the Rift Valley, that monumental geological scar that cuts Africa from north to south for more than 6,000 kilometers. During the rainy season, the lake expands and attracts thousands of pink flamingos that dye the landscape in unreal colors. During the drought, it recedes drastically, leaving plains of crystallized salt that shine like mirrors under the relentless sun. The temperature can vary from 15 degrees during the Kaiti, coldest nights of July, to 45 degrees at the scorching noon of December. The Hadzabe learn to survive in each of these extreme conditions. Their territory lies southwest of the famous Serengeti and south of the Ngorongoro crater, one of the region's richest in wildlife on the entire planet. Lions, leopards, hyenas, elephants, and buffalo share this landscape with the human hunters. It is an environment where complacency means death. The Hadzabe know every centimeter of this territory. They know where to find water during the most severe drought. They know which trees bear fruit in each month of the year. They know where the wild pigs usually sleep and which trails the antelopes pass at dawn. This knowledge is not written in any book. It exists only in the minds of the elders, transmitted orally from generation to generation in a language that no other people on earth can speak. They also carry extraordinary medicinal knowledge. They use aloe vera to treat wounds and cuts. They know the Sansevieria tree, whose macerated leaves produce an effective remedy against snake bites. They extract sap from the commiphora tree to make a natural repellent against malaria-carrying mosquitoes. They prepare a nutritious and refreshing drink from the pulp of the baobab fruit, rich in vitamin C and antioxidants. Every plant of the savannah has a purpose in their vast mental catalogue of ancestral wisdom. Hadzan, the language of the Hadzabe, is what linguists call an isolate. It has no proven kinship with any other existing language on the planet. Its sounds include clicks and pops produced by the tongue against the roof of the mouth, sounds that seem to belong more to a secret code than to a form of human communication. There are dozens of different words to describe animals killed during the hunt, each specifying the size, the method of capture, and the condition of the prey. But there is no word for thank you. In Hadzabe culture, sharing is not a favor. It is simply how things work. 3 hours after leaving the camp, Kauda stopped. His entire body went rigid, as if he had turned into stone. The other hunters froze immediately behind him. Kauda crouched slowly, touched the ground with his fingertips, smelled the earth. Then he pointed to a pile of rocks about 50 meters away, at the foot of a stony hill. Something big was hidden there. The tracks on the ground told the story. A wide furrow, as if someone had dragged a heavy log across the earth. Marks of scales printed in the fine dust, and a characteristic smell that the Hadzabe know well, a musky odor that makes most people instinctively recoil. Snake, not just any snake. By the size of the track, by the evident weight that had compressed the undergrowth, it could only be an African python, the largest serpent on the continent, an animal capable of reaching 6 meters in length and 90 kilos of pure weight, a predator that has been documented swallowing adult hyenas, whole antelopes, and even young crocodiles of over a meter, a creature that the Hadzabe have always avoided. The African python is the 4th largest serpent in the world, ranking only behind the green anaconda of South America, the Burmese python, and the reticulated python of Southeast Asia. Its body can have the circumference of a young tree trunk. Its muscles are capable of exerting a constriction pressure that surpasses any other land animal. In March of 2017, an African python of almost 4 meters was filmed swallowing an adult hyena of 70 kilos. The ingestion process took several hours. These serpents can go more than 2 years without eating a single meal after a great feast. Their metabolism is so slow, so perfectly adapted to scarcity, that it would make any modern nutritionist question everything they know about biology. A female in the incubation period can stay up to 3 months coiled around her eggs without feeding, protecting the next generation with her own body. Onwas looked at the other hunters. No one said anything. The tradition was clear. The Hadzabe eat practically anything they can hunt. Baboons, boars, porcupines, mongooses, birds of all kinds, even bats when hunger presses. But snakes were always different, perhaps because of the danger they represent. perhaps because of ancestral beliefs lost in time. The fact is that, among all the creatures of the savannah, the serpent was the only one the Hadzabe traditionally refused to turn into food. But hunger has a logic of its own. Onwas made a gesture with his head. The men spread out in silence, surrounding the pile of rocks on three sides. Giga, the best archer, positioned himself on the highest point from where he would have a clean angle of fire. Maduru and Ngaula stayed on the flanks, ready to block any escape route. Kauda remained crouched, observing the shadows between the stones. The python was there, coiled upon itself, forming a mound of muscular rings that shone under the filtered light. Its skin exhibited the characteristic pattern of the species, irregular spots of brown, olive, and yellow that blended perfectly with the surrounding rocks. The eyes, two vertical slits of an icy yellow, were closed. The animal was resting, perhaps digesting some prey captured days before. An African python in repose may seem harmless, but here's a deadly illusion. These animals are constrictors. They possess no poison. They kill in another way. When they attack, their teeth curved like fishhooks embed themselves in the prey, preventing any chance of escape. Then, the massive body coils around the victim with a force that can exceed 400 kilos per square centimeter. With every breath the prey releases, the python tightens a little more. Death does not come by asphyxiation, as many think, but by cardiac arrest. The heart simply can no longer pump blood against that crushing pressure. Studies with hunter-gatherer tribes in the Philippines showed that 26% of adult men had survived python attacks. 6 people died in documented attacks between the years 1934 and 1973. Pythons have been recorded swallowing whole children. The relationship between humans and these giant serpents is one of the oldest and most dangerous in the history of our species. The Hadzabe know this. Giga stretched the bowstring slowly, without making a sound. The arrow he chose had no poison. Against a python, the desert rose poison would be useless. These serpents have such a slow metabolism that the poison would take hours to take effect. The only way to bring down a python is through direct physical trauma. The first shot needed to be perfect. The arrow cut the air with an almost inaudible hiss and embedded itself in the side of the python's body, about 30 centimeters from the head. The animal reacted instantly. What seemed like an inert mound of rings exploded into motion. The python uncoiled with surprising speed for its size, revealing the full extent of its body. 4.5 meters of pure muscle, thick as the thigh of an adult man, moving in powerful waves among the rocks. Controlled. Chaos. Maduru fired his arrow, hitting the final third of the body. Ngaula missed the first shot, the arrow ricocheting off a stone. Kauda advanced with an improvised spear, trying to pin the serpent's head to the ground. The python spun, its mouth opened, revealing rows of recurved teeth, and for a terrible instant, it seemed it would manage to escape through a crevice between the rocks. Then Giga fired again. The second arrow entered through the serpent's left eye. The animal convulsed. Its gigantic body whipped the air, striking against the stones with force enough to break human bones. The hunters retreated, keeping a safe distance, waiting. A mortally wounded python can take several minutes to die, and during that time it remains extremely dangerous. Each spasm of that massive body could crush an arm or a leg. 15 minutes later, the serpent finally stopped moving. Silence. The 4 men approached slowly. Onwas touched the python's body with the tip of his spear, checking if there was still any reaction. Nothing. The serpent was dead. Its body extended for almost 5 meters in length, taller than any of the hunters. The estimated weight was at least 60 kilos, perhaps more. Meat enough to feed the entire camp for several days. The decision was made. Transporting a python of 60 kilos through the African bush is no simple task. The serpent's body was divided into 3 sections, each tied to wooden poles that 2 men carried on their shoulders. The weight was equivalent to carrying a teenager on each pole, and the path back to the camp would take at least 2 hours under the scorching sun of the Tanzanian savannah. The Hadzabe do not complain. Complaining is not part of their culture. There is no word in Hadzan to express dissatisfaction with physical labor. The effort is simply accepted as an inevitable part of existence. Carrying heavy loads, walking dozens of kilometers a day, climbing trees of 20 meters to reach beehives, facing dangerous animals with primitive weapons. All this is normal. All this is life. When the group finally arrived at the camp, the women and children were already gathered. The news of the successful hunt had arrived before them. The Hadzabe have a communication system through whistles and shouts that can transmit messages over distances of up to 2 kilometers. A specific sound indicates big game. Another different sound means danger. Yet another summons everyone for an urgent meeting. The sight of the python caused mixed reactions. The children approached with curiosity and fear, never having seen a serpent of that size up close. The older women exchanged looks that contained centuries of non-verbal tradition. Everyone knew that this was different. This broke an ancient rule. But everyone also knew that the hunger of the last weeks had been real, that the children had cried with empty bellies, that something needed to be done. No one questioned it aloud. The preparation process began immediately. The Hadzabe. Do not waste time. Fresh food needs to be consumed quickly in an environment where there is no refrigeration, where the midday heat can reach 40 degrees, where flies and other insects appear in a matter of minutes, attracted by the smell of meat. First, the skin. The skin of an African python is one of the most resistant in the animal kingdom. Thick, covered by overlapping scales, it functions as natural armor that protects the animal from predators and the hostile environment. Removing this skin requires extremely sharp knives and precise knowledge of anatomy. The Hadzabe use blades made of recycled metal, remnants of machetes and abandoned tools they occasionally find on the edges of their territory. The initial cut was made along the entire ventral extension of the serpent, from the neck to the tail. With precise movements, developed over generations of practice, the men separated the skin from the underlying meat. The process took almost an hour. When it finished, the python was completely stripped, revealing pink muscles that extended in parallel layers along the entire length of the body. Python meat is surprisingly lean. Unlike most animals the Hadzabe hunt, serpents do not accumulate significant fat between the skin and the muscles. All the energy they consume goes directly to the growth and maintenance of their massive body. This means that snake meat is almost entirely pure protein, with very little fat to give flavor or prolonged satiety. The Hadzabe do not care about flavor. Food is fuel, full stop. The idea that a meal should be tasty is a luxury of civilizations that have options. When you live hunting and gathering in the African bush, when your next meal depends entirely on what you manage to find and kill that day, criteria like flavor and texture become irrelevant. What matters is nutrition. What matters is survival. The fire was lit using the ancestral technique of the Hadzabe. 2 pieces of comifora wood, a specific tree whose fibers produce ideal friction, are rubbed against each other at high speed. The process requires strength, endurance, and perfect technique. In inexperienced hands, it can take hours without producing a result. An experienced Hadzabe can make fire in less than 3 minutes. The flames rose quickly, fed by dry acacia branches. The python meat was cut into medium-sized pieces, approximately the size of a closed fist. There are no pots in Hadzabe culture. There are no spices, salt, or any type of condiment. The meat is simply placed directly on the embers or skewered on green wood sticks that are held over the fire. The smell that spread through the camp was unlike any other. Snake meat has a characteristic odor when cooked, a musky aroma that vaguely resembles fish, but with earthier notes. For the Hadzabe, who had never prepared this type of meat before, the smell was at once strange and promising. Strange because it departed from everything they knew. Promising because it meant that in a few minutes there would be real food. The distribution followed traditional protocol. Among the Hadzabe, there is no individual ownership over the hunt. The animal a man kills does not belong to him. It belongs to the entire group. The division is done in a strictly egalitarian manner, with each person receiving an equivalent portion regardless of who did what during the hunt. The best archer does not receive the best pieces. The man who carried the most weight has no right to more food. Children, the elderly, pregnant women all receive equal parts. This radical equality is what has kept the Hadzabe alive for 10,000 years. In a society where no one accumulates resources, where no one can become richer or more powerful than the others, internal conflicts are minimized. There is no envy because there is nothing to envy. There is no hierarchy because there is no material basis to sustain it. Each person depends on all the others, and all the others depend on each person. It is a social security system older than any government, more efficient than any bureaucracy. The first bite was Anwas's. As the oldest of the group, it fell to him to test the meat before the others. Not out of privilege, but out of responsibility. If there was something wrong with the food, the damage would be limited to a single person. This ancestral practice has saved entire tribes from accidental poisonings over the centuries. Was chewed slowly, his few remaining teeth working against the fibrous texture of the python meat. His face revealed nothing. After swallowing, he simply nodded. It was safe. The feast began. 18 people eating in concentrated silence, seated in a circle around the fire that was now just glowing embers. The children held their pieces of meat with both hands, biting with enthusiasm despite the strange texture. The adults ate in a more measured way, savoring each portion with the consciousness of those who know that days of plenty are rare. The python meat fed the group for 3 whole days. 60 kilos of pure protein, distributed among 18 people, means approximately 1 kilo of meat per person per day. By Hadzabe standards, this is extraordinary abundance. In normal times, the average meat intake is about 300 grams per day, supplemented by fruits, roots, and the honey the men collect by climbing immense trees. Honey, incidentally, is the most precious food in Hadzabe culture, more valued than meat itself. To find it, the hunters developed one of the most fascinating partnerships between humans and wild animals anywhere in the world. There is a bird called the honey guide that has learned over thousands of years to guide the Hadzabe to hidden hives. The bird flies ahead, emitting specific calls, landing on visible branches, waiting for the humans to follow it. When they reach the hive, the Hadzabe use smoke to calm the bees and extract the honey. In exchange, they leave behind the wax and the larvae, the favorite food of the guide bird. It is a cooperation that was not taught. It was not trained. It simply evolved over generations of mutual coexistence. The bird cannot access the hives alone. The humans cannot find them without help. Together both prosper. Scientists have documented that Hadzabe boys begin to learn the calls of the honey guide from 5 or 6 years of age, developing this skill over decades of practice. During these 3 days, the rhythm of the camp changed. With full bellies, the hunters did not need to leave before dawn. The women could dedicate more time to other activities besides the incessant search for food. The children played with more energy, their laughter echoing through the valley as it has for 10,000 years. And then, on the 4th day, everything returned to normal. The python bones were left behind, as the Hadzabe always do. The skin was abandoned on a rock, where vultures and other scavengers would soon take care of it. The camp was dismantled in a matter of minutes, each family rolling their few belongings into bundles that fit on their shoulders. The Hadzabe moved to another location. This is how they live, never remaining more than a few weeks in the same place, always following the cycles of nature, the migrations of the animals, the ripening of the fruits, the flow of the waters, without attachment to specific territories, without borders beyond those defined by the presence of other tribes, free in a way that most of humanity has forgotten was possible. The hunt of the python became history, a story told in Hadzan, the language of clicks and pops, passed from mouth to mouth around future fires. A story about the day hunger was greater than tradition. Story about adaptation, about survival, about the human capacity to change when change is necessary. The python bones were left behind, as the Hadzabe always do. Nothing is wasted, but nothing is accumulated. Tomorrow, the camp may be in another place. The day after tomorrow, the hunt begins again. 1,300 people. That is the number that remains of a lineage that has crossed 100 centuries without changing its essence. While empires were born and crumbled, while humanity invented the wheel, writing, and the internet, the Hadzabe continued doing exactly what they did before, waking with the suns, hunting what the earth offers, dividing everything into equal parts, sleeping under the stars. They have no word for thank you. They do not need one. Sharing is not kindness among the Hadzabe. It is simply how things are. And perhaps that is the hardest lesson these last hunters offer the modern world. It is not about going back to the past. It is about remembering what it means to need one another. Each shared meal, each group hunt, each night around the fire tells us something we forgot somewhere between the supermarket shelves and the cell phone screens. Survival was never individual. Humanity was born in a group, and the Hadzabe, against all odds, still live this truth. The sun sets over the Rift Valley as it set 10,000 years ago. The same stars appear in the same infinite sky. Somewhere in that golden savanna, 18 people prepare to sleep under the celestial vault, their stomachs full of python meat, their bodies tired from a day of walking, their dreams populated by hunts yet to come. Tomorrow, everything starts again, and the Hadzabe will be ready as they always have been, as they always will be, as long as a single member of this ancestral tribe remains to wield a bow, follow a track, and share the result with all those they call family. But the future is uncertain. In recent decades, Hadzabe territory has shrunk dramatically. Datoga herders invade their traditional lands with herds of cattle that destroy the vegetation and scare away the game. Iraq-W farmers cut down forests to plant corn and beans. Foreign trophy hunters pay fortunes to kill the same animals the Hadzabe need to survive. The Tanzanian government has already tried multiple times to settle the tribe, forcing them to abandon their way of life and accept permanent houses, agriculture, and Christianity. All attempts failed. The Hadzabe simply returned to the bush as soon as the pressure diminished. Researchers from universities like Harvard and Duke have studied the Hadzabe for decades, fascinated by their unique lifestyle. They discovered that, despite walking on average 15 kilometers a day and performing intense physical labor, the Hadzabe burn approximately the same amount of calories as sedentary people in offices in New York. This exercise paradox challenges everything we thought we knew about human metabolism. They also discovered that the gut flora of the Hadzabe changes seasonally, adapting to the availability of different foods throughout the year. These are discoveries that could revolutionize Western medicine, extracted from the knowledge of people who have never seen a hospital. This is real survival in Africa. It does not happen on edited television programs. It does not depend on modern equipment or rescue teams. It happens every day, in silence, far from the cameras and the headlines, starring people whose names the world will never know. The Hadzabe do not ask for recognition. They do not seek fame. They do not accumulate followers on social networks. They just live as their parents lived, their grandparents, their ancestors 100 generations ago. And perhaps in the end that is all that really matters. To live. Simply to live.